Hello creative friends, I'm Anastasia and welcome back to my channel. My faux stone projects have become some of the most loved DIYs on my channel, so today I'm bringing them all together in one video. I'll walk you through a variety of stone texture techniques, and I hope these inspire you to create your own beautiful faux stone decor for your home. Let's go! First is this lovely vase that I found at Goodwill for $7.99. It originally had this mauve ombre color that just didn't match my style, but it was originally valued at $24.99 from Target, so I consider this a steal. And I'm very inspired by this Studio McGee vase with a round circle detailing, but I want mine to look a bit more stone-like, so I won't be going for that glossy finish. I'm giving this a light sand here with 50 grit sandpaper so that the paint sticks better. I'm using this bowl here to give me a level line all the way around the base to create my line for those round details. And then I'm taking a tape measure to just make sure my line is level all the way around the vase. I'm going in with my hot glue and I'm going to create those circles. Feel free to get creative with this. I wanted mine to look very organic, so I didn't worry too much about them being perfect. The great thing about using hot glue on glass is that usually it's very easy to take some of the hot glue off if you mess up. And try again. After that dries, I'm going in with a white primer and I'm going to put one coat all around the entire vase. And once the primer is dried, I then went in with my first layer of the actual color that I'm making this vase, which is this beige color that I got from the mist tinted paint section at the hardware store. To make my paint thicker, I'm going to be adding some baking soda. I ended up doing 3 layers total, so with each layer I added a bit more baking soda to increase the texture as each layer progressed. And my baby came to visit. This is Hazel. She's so cute. My next 2 layers are going to be sponged on using a paper towel. You can definitely use a real sponge for this, but I did not have one, and a paper towel works just fine for the look I was going for. So I'm mixing some cinnamon and some ground pepper in a pile next to me, and I'm going to be going back and forth between sponging on the paint mixture and the cinnamon and pepper mixture. This is going to add dimension and color and give it more of an aged look. And since this is a second layer, I did add more baking soda to my paint mixture to make it nice and thick so that it gave a lot of texture when I sponged this on. And now this is my 3rd layer of sponging on. You can tell it already has a lot of texture, but I just wanted to keep going with the texture on mine to get it to really look like an old piece of pottery. Feel free to do less texture than I do or more texture. This is a creative process and it's totally up to you how it turns out. This is looking gorgeous so far. You can definitely take some sandpaper if you'd like to tone down some of that texture and smooth out any rough spots. And I'm finishing it here with a matte clear coat spray. So this is a vase that I did not thrift, but I got it secondhand from my mother-in-law, who gave it to me so I can give it a new life. My goal is to make it look like this Demetria terracotta vase from McGee & Co. This one sells for $98, and y'all know I love a good stone vase, and this one is just a really pretty deep brown color, and I love all the texture that's happening on it, and I think I'll be able to recreate this look. Because the surface of this is pretty glossy, I'm going to give it a quick sand to add a little grit so the paint is more likely to stick. Then I'm taking this light beige color and I'm mixing it with some baking soda. This will also help the paint adhere better to the glossy surface. So I'm going to give it a nice base coat using a sponge brush. After one coat, it still needed a bit more coverage, so I did a second coat and it turned out beautiful and gave it a nice, slightly textured base for the rest of the layers we're going to be putting on. Now I'm going in with this patching plaster and I'm just using a glove in my hand to rub this all over the vase. You can be a little bit messy with this. It definitely doesn't have to be perfect. It can be thicker in some areas and thinner in others to give that textured, imperfect look. I'm making sure that I'm not creating perfect lines with it because I really want it to look very organic. I started tapping my hand on it to give it a stippled look, and I really liked the way that was looking. So this is after one coat of that has dried, and I'm going to go over it with a second coat just using that same technique of smearing it on and then tapping my hand around to give it all that texture, and then it's going to have a nice, beautiful, layered look. Something I noticed as I was tapping it was that it was actually pulling off the first layer of plaster and creating this really cool look. So then I started doing that intentionally on random parts of the vase. Then after it dried, I'm so happy with how it turned out. You can definitely stop here and go ahead and paint it the color you want, but I'm going to tone down this texture a bit with some 220 sandpaper and just go over it enough to take away some of the harsh peaks and give it a weathered look overall. This is how it looked after I was completely done sanding. I'm going to be using all of these colors, plus a little bit of black, but I will be mostly using the color brown oxide because that most closely matches the color of the Demetria vase. And then the other colors in there will just be to add some more dimension, so it's not just one flat color. I'm stippling this on the vase randomly with a damp paper towel, and I didn't mix the colors together so that way I can control how much of each color is being added, and I can add more or less of certain colors in different areas. If I feel that certain colors are too harsh, then I will just go over it a little bit with the brown oxide color to blend it out, and this gave it a lot of depth and dimension. If you're enjoying these projects so far, make sure you subscribe to my channel so you don't miss more videos like this one, as well as thrifting, decorating, and upcoming room makeover content. And once the vase was fully covered in that paint, I let it dry and then went back to just look and see if any parts needed to be blended out more, and if they did, then I took more brown oxide and went over it until I was happy with how it looked. Some of the more textured areas were a little bit harder to reach with the paper towel, so I'm just using a cotton swab to paint those smaller spots. And lastly, I'm going to mix a little bit of black and white acrylic paint and water it down, and I'm using a cotton swab to put this on certain parts of the vase, such as where there are larger chunks of texture, because I want there to be a little bit of a dark edge around those areas where they might naturally collect dirt if this was a real pottery vase. I don't want this to be too harsh, so after I dab it on with the cotton swab, I'm going to wipe it off with a paper towel to make it more subtle. Then after that, I did just touch it up with a little more brown oxide to tone down the darker areas. Then once it dried, I'm going in with a clear matte protective spray, which is going to seal it all in. I'm styling it on my dresser and adding in those white roses and eucalyptus sprigs that I thrifted. I'm just so thrilled with how this turned out, so let me know what you think. I was browsing through a thrift store and came across this very large jug. They asked $15 for it, but I bargained them down to $8. It has this very pretty flower painting on it, however, it was overall in a little bit of rough shape. Some of the paint was chipping off, and in places the paint was pretty cracked, but I saw a lot of potential given the shape. It's very large, and it's in this shape that we're seeing a lot recently at decor stores and places like Target. I knew I wanted to look online to get some inspiration for it, and I ended up finding this one from Target. It is a hearth and hand piece, and they sell this one for $24.99. And this one is a 12-inch, which is a little bit smaller than the one I found. I also found this one on Wayfair by Joss & Main, which they sell for $40, but this one is very small. It's only a little over 4 inches tall. So both of these vases I will be using as inspiration for mine, but I'm not trying to completely copy the look. So here, I'm just giving this vase a cleanup with some dish soap on a wet paper towel. And I'm trying to get the sticker off the best I can. Usually dish soap will do the trick, but this sticker is super old, so I'm using a paint can opener to scrape it off. It won't matter too much since we will be plastering over it, but I got a little carried away since it was very satisfying to scrape this off. This ended up being pretty dirty. There was quite a bit of dirt and sticky stuff at the bottom where the padded protective feet on it have slid around a bit. So I'm just working to get that gunk off so our vase feels brand new. I'll be using this patching plaster. Wearing a glove, I'm just picking up a scoop of the plaster in my hand and rubbing it all over the vase. This has got to be my favorite technique for applying plaster because it's so much faster than trying to use a sponge, especially on a bigger piece like this. I'm going in horizontal lines because I would like the grooves in my plaster to go horizontally, but feel free to do this part of the process any way you like to get the look that you're going for. This is how the first coat of plaster looks after it dried. I'm really liking the way it looks. Now I'm just going to put a second coat over the top. And once that dries, I'm taking some 50 grit sandpaper and I'm rubbing it all over the vase because I want mine to look plastered but not be super bumpy overall. So I want the finish to be smooth, but I want it to have a textured look. I decided to paint it Popular Gray by Sherwin-Williams, but once I started that, I just didn't think it was exactly what I had envisioned. So I decided to try a technique I've seen other people do and I wanted to try. So I'll be taking some wet coffee grounds from my coffee this morning and just rubbing this all over the vase. What this is doing is essentially dyeing the plaster with the coffee. You can totally get creative with this part. You can concentrate the coffee grounds on certain areas, you can cover the entire vase in it, you can go over it several times to darken it as much as you want. You have so many options. What I'm especially loving about doing this on top of the plaster is that the coffee doesn't always get into the deepest grooves. So you're still gonna have that variation where there's that plaster white showing through in different areas. And I really like that distressed, discolored look. I put a little more plaster on top of the area where I'd previously painted some of that Popular Gray. And after that dried, I sanded that down and then dyed that area with the coffee so that it matched the rest of the jug. Once the coffee has dried, you want to just wipe away the coffee grounds and then seal it with a clear matte protective spray like this one. To style, I'm using some beautiful stems that I found at Goodwill recently, and here is the final reveal. If you saw my recent video of our empty house tour, you'll probably remember how excited I am about our backyard patio. I can't wait to get some furniture out there so we can enjoy it in time for fall. That's why I'm so grateful to Lue Bona for sending me some of their high quality outdoor pieces. Lue Bona is an online store that creates beautiful indoor and outdoor furniture. I've had their Miranda Adirondack chair for a few months now and I absolutely love it, so of course I had to get another one. I also got the cane side table, which is the perfect addition. They are so easy to assemble. The chairs only took about 30 minutes each and the table took less than 10 minutes. These old hand-me-down chairs obviously haven't held up well and we need to get rid of them and, well, that's one way to do it. So now that we've made room on the patio, it's time to bring in these new gorgeous Lue Bona chairs and side table. I love that this chair is foldable for easy storage when needed and comes with this practical cup holder. It's so comfortable and I just love sitting out here enjoying these late summer and early fall afternoons. You can browse the full selection of furniture on shopluebona.com. Lue Bona offers free US shipping and you'll receive your item in just 3 to 7 days. Make sure you use my promo code Anastasia15 for 15% off your order. Everything is linked in the description box below. For this DIY, I wanted to recreate this Norris speckled vase from McGee & Co. It sells for $60. I think it's really cute and I love the speckled beige and black, and I think we can definitely achieve this look by DIYing. My mother-in-law was so nice and gave me some of her decor she wasn't using so that I could give it a new look. So I'll be using this cute little ceramic bud vase that I got from her to create the McGee & Co. look-alike. Because the surface is very glossy and we're going to be painting it, I'm giving it a light scuff sand because having a bit of texture on the surface really helps the paint stick. And now I'm wiping it clean to eliminate any dust or grit that could have been left from the sandpaper so none of that gets into our paint. And now we're going to go in with our first layer of paint, which is technically going to act as our primer. So I'm using some leftover Popular Gray by Sherwin-Williams and I'm giving it a coat all over. I like to do this because it gives us a nice solid base to work on and it covers up any existing color so that we don't see any of that bleeding through the new color. I ended up giving it 2 coats overall. Now to texturize the vase, I'm using some more of that Popular Gray by Sherwin-Williams, and I'm mixing it with this light beige color that I got from the Mist Tinted Paint section of Lowe's. I'm adding in some baking soda in there, which will texturize and thicken the paint so that we get that stone-like finish. I got this bath sponge from Dollar Tree, and I thought it would be perfect for projects like this, so I'm just going to cut it up and use a section of it as a craft sponge, and I'm just going to sponge on the paint. Typically I use a paper towel to do this step, but I will say this sponge is much easier, and I really just love the overall look that it creates. I always like to do multiple layers of texture just so that it has more dimension. So after that first layer dries, I'm adding some more baking soda to the paint so that our second layer is a little bit thicker. You can keep going and do as many layers as you want, but I found that 2 layers was plenty for my project. Just look at that texture. I always get so excited when creating stone vases like this because it truly blows my mind how baking soda, paint, and a sponge can create this beautiful texture and make a vase look so drastically different. And after that dries, it's now time for us to make it look like stone and give it those speckles. So I'm using both of these textured spray paints by Rust-Oleum that I got from Walmart, one in beige and one in black. I'm going to spray both of these on there until it looks similar to the McGee & Co vase. The black spray came out in quite big drops that kind of looked a bit too harsh, so I'm taking a paper towel and just dabbing at the black so that it blends in better. Lastly, I just like to wipe off any stone spray that's on the very bottom of the vase where it will be sitting on a shelf or other surface, because if you have that textured paint on the bottom, it feels a lot like sand, so it could scratch up a painted surface that you set it on. So I just wipe that away the best I can while it's still wet so that it's less likely to scratch my surfaces. After that completely dries, I'm spraying it with a good coat of this matte clear protective spray. And now it's time for the final reveal. I saw this vase at the thrift store for $2.75, and I knew immediately that this shape was going to look so cute once I DIY it. I knew that I wanted to make it look like a stone or pottery piece, so I went online for inspiration and I saw this Pottery Barn one. This is the Azina outdoor planter, and the small size sells for $199, but I really love the texture and the stone finish on it. So I want to try to recreate a version of that on this piece, but still make it my own. So I'm giving it a sand just to scratch up that shiny surface because it will help the paint adhere better. Then I'm wiping all that sanding dust away, and then going in with this matte clamshell spray paint and giving it a nice solid color base for us to work on. I was a little too heavy-handed with the spray here, so I'm just dabbing away those drips so that they don't show through on the final piece. Overall, it took 2 coats of the spray to completely cover up the pink color that it was. The spray paint is dry now, so it's time to add that stone texture. Now I'm taking some of this light beige paint and mixing it with a light gray paint and adding in some baking soda, which will thicken it up and give it a gritty texture that's really key to creating the stone-like finish. I really like using a sponge for this because it also adds to that natural texture look. I did about 2 coats of this, but you can do as many as you want until you're happy with how it looks. Next, I'm going in with this beige multicolored textured spray paint, and this also has a gritty, sandy textured finish, so it's going to add even more texture to the vase. And I like to wipe off the texture at the very bottom where the vase will be sitting on a surface because it does have that sandiness to it. It could possibly scratch up a surface that you were to set it on. Once that's dry, I'm going in with this matte clear spray to seal it all in. I decided to decorate it on my dresser, so I stacked a couple of books and I'm using this little $1 thrifted bowl on top, and then in the vase I styled some pretty white flowers and eucalyptus. Now I'm going to show you how you can use a vase to make a DIY lamp. So we need to find something that will hold the lampshade in place. And the key here is finding something that fits the opening of your vase, but is also tall enough so that the lampshade sits at the correct height on the vase. I tried several glass jars I had before I found this wood piece that ended up being the perfect size. I'm just going to use some hot glue to secure the metal part of the lampshade onto this wood piece. That'll give me really good stability. It's also perfect to use hot glue because it is pretty temporary. So I'll just be able to pop the lampshade right off of this in the future if I ever wanted to use this shade on a different lamp. Now in this particular area of my room, I really don't use a lamp, so this is more just for decorative purposes. But if you do want to make it a real lamp, you can buy some puck lights. They are battery powered and you just push them to turn them on. And you can stick that right into your lampshade where the light bulb would go, and then you have a functioning lamp. Right before I reveal how that lamp turned out, I want to show you a couple more items I thrifted that I'll be styling with it. I really love the colors of this lidded canister. That taupey brown stripe on it is just super pretty, and it's a color that I really love to use in my decorating. This was half off, so it was only $1. I grabbed a couple of books as well. All of these were half off, so they were just 50 cents each, and while they might not look very aesthetic at first glance, they actually are so beautiful once you take the paper cover off. I've been getting more into warm, rich brown tones lately, so I was really excited to find a couple of books that were a beautiful, solid brown color with really gorgeous gold lettering on them. Lastly, this one is just a solid black and it's kind of a larger book, so it would be great in a stack with some other larger books. I'm styling my dresser with those gorgeous books and I'm putting that little canister on top. Finally, here is the reveal of that adorable lamp I DIY'd, and I am truly so charmed by it. It looks like it could be a Studio McGee piece from Target, and it's simply so stunning. If I were to find just a lamp in this style, it would probably cost between $25 to $50 or even more depending on the store. Overall, this entire vignette of items here only cost about $6. We are going to be making a large stone vase out of this thrifted item. It was $12.99 at Goodwill, but it was a half off day, so I got this for $6.50. I wasn't sure if this was a plant pot because it does have drainage holes at the bottom, but it came with this metal ring around the top that I've never seen before, so if any of you know what this could be, please let me know in the comments. When I first saw this piece, I knew I wanted it to be black. I found this McGee & Co. jar online and this restoration hardware vessel that resembled my vision, but for $200 to $300 each, I knew DIYing was a better option for me. Here I am getting it all cleaned up, then lightly sanding it with a 50 grit to allow the paint to adhere better. I did 1 coat of white primer, but you can use acrylic paint instead. I'm taking some of that leftover paint and plaster mixture from our candle, and I'm adding in some brown and black paint until I get a color that I desire. Then I did 2 coats of this mixture. Now it's time to texturize. So I'm combining a mixture of dark brown, golden brown, and mustard yellow and a little bit of red until I create a color that I like. I use a paper towel to sponge it on, and on the side here I made myself a pile of cinnamon and flour, which I'm dipping into as needed to create more dimension and a beautiful aged look. When you're thrifting, it is good to look at the shapes of items rather than the color. Items like this can be easily painted to match your color scheme, but it's a lot harder to change shape. I thought this one had a unique shape, and I loved that it's a larger scale item. And after that paint is all dry, I am going in with a matte clear coat spray to seal it together. This scalloped ceramic bowl is a piece I thrifted several years ago, and I honestly have only displayed this in my home once for a very short period of time. I think that's because it's navy and I really don't decorate with a lot of navy. However, I love the shape and this bowl is just very cute, so I think that changing the color to one that I do decorate with will allow me to display this beautiful piece all the time in my home. First, I'm cleaning it off with a Clorox wipe to remove any dust that has accumulated. And then I'm taking some 50 grit sandpaper and I'm going to use that to scratch up the surface so the paint will stick. With surfaces that are as slick as this one or have a shiny glaze, scuffing it up is a great way to ensure that your paint will be able to adhere to it. I got this white acrylic paint from Dollar Tree and I wanted to put that on there as a primer. However, the paint was just bubbling and not sticking to the surface well at all. And I think it's because this paint is pretty thin and low quality. So instead, I'll be using my Popular Gray by Sherwin-Williams and painting that on as a base coat. This paint is thicker and overall worked much better. If you love this video, please make sure to subscribe and leave a like down below. That helps me know what type of content you guys want to see more of on my channel. Next, I'm taking some more of that Popular Gray and mixing some baking soda with it to create a bit of texture and thickness to the paint, until it's about this consistency. Keep in mind that you can change the amount of baking soda you add based on how textured you want it. The more baking soda you add, the more textured it will be. I'm painting an even layer over the entire piece. A trick here is to do the bottom half first, and then once that dries, flip it over and do the top half. That way you aren't doing the top side first and it possibly get messed up when you flip it over. This is how the first coat turned out. And now I'll be doing a second coat. I have two different stone spray paints that I tested out. The one on the left here is a beige stone and the one on the right is a black stone. Based on this test, I decided to go with the beige one because I wanted a more subtle color to it. I'm holding the spray paint very far away so it doesn't create a super heavy texture. I'm following the same technique here by spraying the bottom first, and then once that dries, flipping it over and spraying the top. Once that completely dries, I'm taking this clear matte protective spray and giving the entire thing a good coat so that it lasts for a very long time. To style, I'll be using this gorgeous burgundy eucalyptus that I found at the Dollar Tree. And now it's time for the final reveal. I am pretty sure you have all seen this candle that I'm about to DIY. This is the Jack Raw candle sold by Lulu in Georgia. This candle retails for $360, which is just quite a bit more than I would like to pay for a candle personally. So today we are going to DIY this and put our own flair on it. So I got these two bowls from the Dollar Tree and I'm using some E6000 to adhere them together. You can be generous with the glue, but be careful that it's not too much to where it would squeeze out the sides once you put the bowls together. I'm also adding a bit of hot glue because it dries quicker and that will allow the bowls to be a little bit more secure as the E6000 dries. After the glue has completely dried, I would recommend using a spackle or nail hole filler to seal the gap between the bowls. This is not something that I did until later in the process, so save yourself some steps now and just go ahead and do it. After the glue has dried, I'm mixing some paint with some patching plaster at about a 50-50 ratio, and then I'm adding in baking soda until I reach the desired texture that I want. The more baking soda you add, the thicker the paint will be, and the more textured your piece will become. And once I got this all mixed up, I did 2 coats of this mixture overall. The original candle is a cream color, but I wanted mine to be black, so I went over it with this black craft paint, and I did 2 coats of that as well. After the paint has dried, I'm spraying on some of that matte clear coat. And once the clear coat has dried, we are ready to turn this into a candle. This is my favorite part. So of course, I grabbed a few of those unscented candles from the Dollar Tree. This is a no-brainer, but please be careful not to burn yourself with hot wax. Because they're unscented, I added these wax cubes that you can get from Walmart, and I melted the wax down on a medium-low heat on my stove for about 45 minutes to an hour. I melted down 4, I ended up only needing 3. Once the candles are completely melted, you can scoop out the wicks to use in our DIY candle. I applied some super glue to the bottom of my wicks and attached them in the bowl. I highly recommend pouring your candles into a pitcher that has a lip or a spout on it, so that way you have the best success when pouring this into your candle. Unfortunately, my camera was not recording when I poured in my wax. Make sure you wind your wicks around a skewer or a popsicle stick while the candle sets. And once the candle sets, you can cut your wicks to your desired length. This really sleek black-footed bowl sells at Crate & Barrel for $89.95. It's very versatile and can be styled on shelves, coffee tables, or as a fruit display in the kitchen. Today, I'll be recreating this look using items I got from Dollar Tree. I found this garden dish. It's plastic, although I wish they'd had it in glass, but it was the perfect shape and size. I also got this fishbowl vase for the bottom of our bowl. This is one of my favorite types of DIYs because it's so easy to make and it looks very high-end. I'll be attaching the bowls to each other like so, using some E6000 adhesive, which provides a very strong hold. Then I'm using some hot glue, which sets quickly and will hold the bowls in place while it completely dries. Setting a heavy coaster on top so that it stays together and doesn't slide around. I'm using this spackling and nail hole filler to hide the seam between the two bowls. This is a small change that will make a big impact on your piece looking high-end and like it's all one piece. I found that putting some in my hand and rolling it into a little tube shape like this was the easiest way for me to fill every part of the gap evenly. After that dries, I'm taking that black acrylic paint and mixing it with some baking soda. You can adjust the amount of baking soda by adding more for more texture or less for less texture. Once I got mine to this consistency, I started painting it on my bowl. It may be a little hard to see here, but it was developing some clumps, and I think this mixture just wasn't able to stick very well to the slick, unprimed surface. So I decided to add some patching plaster, which I know will help it be able to stick. And I'm adding some more black paint and baking soda to even out the proportions of each. I did 2 coats of this mixture and it came out exactly as I wanted it to look. I'm doing a light sand on any rough areas. The plaster made it dry more gray, so then I went in with 2 coats of just black paint. In a previous video, I turned this bowl into a fall pumpkin centerpiece. So if you'd like to see how I did that, you can click the link in the top right of this video or in the description box below. After it was all dry, I gave it a coat of clear matte protective spray on each side. This is it after it has dried. I can't believe how simple it is to make such a gorgeous pedestal bowl that looks modern and textured and like really a statement piece. Crate & Barrel styled theirs with some fruit, so I'm styling it with some mangoes to add a beautiful pop of color. And this is the finished look. This is my mother-in-law's vase that she gave to me so that I can upcycle it into something that she wants to display in her home again. So I went online to get inspired, and I found these vases that are so similar, that come in that off-white color, and I thought this is just the perfect look. Several places sell these vases. They're at Target, they're also at Walmart and Home Depot, to name a few. I'm really excited to revamp this vase for her. I'm sanding it with some coarse grit to really put some texture on that smooth surface. This will help the paint stick so much better. I'm wiping off all that sanding dust with a wet paper towel. To cover the existing color, I'm doing a base of Popular Gray by Sherwin-Williams over the entire vase. Now I'm taking a smaller brush to do a partial second coat on the areas where the color still shows through. The inspiration for this vase has a smooth finish, so you really can just go in with paint to get that look, but I am going to mix in a little bit of baking soda. I'm just mixing that same Popular Gray paint that we did on the base layer, and mixing in some baking soda, not enough to make it super textured, but enough so that it doesn't just look like paint. I want the finish to resemble real ceramic as much as possible. And I did 2 coats total of the baking soda mixture. Once that dries, I'm using this clear matte protective spray to give it a finishing coat. And here's how the vase looks. I hope my mother-in-law loves it. This next piece I picked up at the Goodwill outlet. At first glance, I didn't love the color, but I loved the shape. Turns out this is a piece originally from At Home and was just $5 new, but I got it for 99 cents. So while this wasn't originally a very expensive piece, we are going to give it a makeover and make it look like it could be on the shelves at West Elm or Pottery Barn. I definitely wanted to paint this, but I was worried the paint wouldn't stick to this smooth glass jar. So I'm giving it a sand with some 50 grit to create a rough finish. And the blue tint actually started coming off. Now just cleaning it up with rubbing alcohol. And then spraying it with a coat of flat black spray paint. But I'd recommend doing 2 coats. After that dries, then I'm spraying 2 coats of this stone texture spray paint. It's my first time trying this out and I'm very excited about it. This is how it looked after just 1 coat. And this is after a second coat. This texture is amazing. I recommend trying this out if you want a really quick and easy DIY. I'm sealing it with some clear matte protective spray. I found this vase at my local thrift store that looked like it was already someone's DIY project. It had originally been a glass vase, but someone had already painted it white. And for $1, I really couldn't pass up the chance to try to elevate this even more. Lately, I've been seeing more and more of these ceramic vases with these horizontal lines around them. This one from Magnolia is just so beautiful, and those lines add in a bit of subtle interest. This one from Pottery Barn has a bit more of an obvious texture. I love the plastered look of these, especially this larger one. so I'm going to recreate my own version of this look. The paint was already chipping away, so it needed to be redone anyways. I'm starting by cleaning up this vase really well. Then I'm taking some twine that I got from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to use that to create the textured lines going around the vase. I'm just using some hot glue to attach the twine to the vase, and I'm eyeballing it, but trying to get it as level as possible all the way around. I'm going to create 2 lines, but you can do as many as you want. There were a few times that I glued down a piece of twine, and I just didn't think it was as even as I wanted it to be, but the great thing about hot glue is that it's pretty forgiving when it comes to taking it off slick surfaces, especially after it's just dried. When you get to the end, you can just cut off the excess. To get that gorgeous plastered texture that we're going for, I'm going in with some patching plaster, and I'm trying a new technique today. I am just taking it with my hand and smearing it all over the vase, and I'm going in a horizontal direction with this because I want my ridges in the plaster to go all horizontally around the vase. Make sure to get inside the neck as well because you want it to look like a seamless piece of pottery. So make sure that every visible part of the vase is covered in that plaster. I let the first coat dry and then I went in with a second coat. And I feel like this gave me a very full coverage that completely covered the twine and also gave me a very layered and extra textured finish on the piece. Now I'm taking some 50 grit sandpaper and just smoothing out any areas that are lumpy. There were a few places where some clumps of plaster dried, so that's mostly what I'm taking off. I personally am going to leave most of the texture on here because that's just what I like. To get my base color, I'm taking this gorgeous beige that I got from the mist tinted paint section at the hardware store, and I'm just painting that all over the vase. Just look at that difference between how stark white the plaster is and that gorgeous neutral beige color. And once again, don't forget to paint the inside rim so it has a seamless look. This next part I was very excited to try. So I got the stone texture spray paint that's in this beige color. I did 2 coats of the spray, letting it dry in between. Then after that was dry, I sprayed on this matte, clear, protective spray. To style, I'll be using some gorgeous faux rosemary stems that I found at Walmart for just 97 cents each. Walmart had a great selection of fall foliage to choose from, and this price is cheaper than Dollar Tree, so I was very impressed. I hope these projects got your creative energy flowing and inspires you to try some out yourself. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.